Great. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live webinar cooking class here at Basics Market. My name is Sam Maggi. I'm a chef and culinary mentor with Basics. And this evening, I'm very excited to present Drew Bergschneider. He is a butcher here with the Basics Market, and he's going to tell us a whole bunch of stuff about ribs. And we're going to be looking at a few cuts, different styles of ribs, and then we're going to put together a rub for the ribs, and we're also going to look at a barbecue sauce that you can make. Without further let me just say this. During this class, you are welcome to ask questions, and please do so. Questions, comments, go ahead and hit us up on your little button there on your screen, and they'll be relayed to Drew and myself, and we'll answer them as best we can. And if there's something that is beyond us, we will research it and we can get back to you on your email if you leave us that. So Drew, yeah. It looks like you brought in a whole bunch of ribs.
Yeah. All right, yeah, so.
What you got?
Yeah, so what we got here is, this is a full rack of spare ribs. And then just beyond that, we've got these are the baby backs here. And you can see that those used to be one whole piece. This is actually backwards.
So the baby back is the tips of the spare rib.
It is the part closest to the spine. So
okay.
It's where your rib chop.
upper rib. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll point to
and then these are all pork ribs.
All pork ribs. Yes. So this is the full rack of spares.
Okay.
Baby backs. This is what we call a St. Louis cut. So a St. Louis cut is when you cut off the rib tip. The rib tip is down at the very bottom. It's kind of like part of the belly. It's also like if this was a beef, this could also be turned into skirt steak. So what we do is we cut that off, and you can cut through it just with a knife. You don't need to use a bandsaw or anything. You can get a full rack of spares and cut St. Louis styles yourself very easily.
And this is pretty good eating too, like this stuff.
Absolutely,
the tip there.
It's just not very ribby, right?
Yeah,
it's not all
right.
on a
so generally in your butcher shop, does that go into the sausage grinder, or what do you
sometimes,
do with that?
Yeah, sometimes we'll, nice, good fatty meat. We'll cut it up and grind it, turn it into sausages. But I think it's a really good braising cut. Inexpensive. And it makes the best carnitas I've ever had.
Yeah.
Very good cut. So if you could save some money getting a whole rack of spares and cutting them yourself or having your butcher do it.
So if you want the full piece, you just ask for spare ribs.
Yes, spare ribs means the whole, and usually a butcher will ask you, do you want St. Louis cut or do you want whole spare ribs? And Okay. So the St. Louis style, they have the benefit of being, this is all just a rib and meat in between.
Yeah.
So when you cook it, you just cut, and you got classic ribs.
Yeah, that's my personal favorite.
Same here.
Just I guess because they are bigger than the baby back, and you get all that nice meat on there.
Yeah, you get a little more for your money for sure.
And then what do you have going on at the end here?
So these are what's known as country style ribs, or often called a boneless shoulder rib. They're not a rib at all. The meat comes from an area called the cushion, and it sits up against the first few ribs that would be up here, which we turn this whole portion, like what would be here. And I should switch and point to this guy here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So right here, the picnic ham is where the cushion is. And these guys are just slices of the cushion, typically, or any part of the shoulder. It's just slices of shoulder. I don't know why it's called a rib. People think it's a rib. Not really a rib.
Okay. But it's rib adjacent.
It is rib adjacent. It's close to a rib,
Yeah.
but most cuts aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so up here you've got the loin. This is where the baby backs are. So they are
Right off the back fat there.
yeah. So they come right off the spine. And you've got so on the side where the baby backs are, that's your pork loin, your, like oftentimes that'll be your center cut chops, your boneless chops, or your rib chops. And then they connect here to the spare ribs. And the spare ribs are the belly. So if you took the whole belly, right, and you cut all the meat off, you got a pork belly and then you got spare ribs. They're two parts of the whole there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. And so we, as at Basics Market, there is a butcher shop in each market, the 5 locations, and then one just meat market, which is the Beaverton location. And we're looking at, we grow all our own beef and chickens. And I think we're looking at pork pretty soon. Is that right?
Totally.
We're gonna have our own homegrown pork.
That's right. Yeah, the sows came, I believe, in March, and they, had a litter, and we'll be looking at, I believe, October is the target for when we're going to have our own, own brand of hogs going.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, but all our butchers are available. Really happy to help you with finding the cut you want, and and you can ask them about these various things Drew was talking about. If you want the spare rib, the baby back, or the St. Louis rib. And then if someone wanted this piece, are those ever available?
The rib tip? Absolutely.
Just ask for a rib tip,
Ask
and
for
you
the
can
rib tip. Yeah, we
can get
often
those.
have them on hand because the St. Louis style is very popular.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants the rib tip. It takes some cooking, takes some doing to turn it into something good. So
All right. And by doing, you just mean like a slow cook, a braise almost.
It has a lot of connective tissue, a lot of cartilage, and it's a braising cut for sure.
Now, Drew, one thing, so let's get into the technique a little bit about cooking some pork ribs. Let's see, do you have the, what do we call this? The, on the backside, the membrane.
Yeah.
Do we have a membrane on these still?
We typically leave ours membrane on unless somebody asks, because you can't put it back on, but you can always take it off.
Can we demonstrate, or either you or I, maybe demonstrate pulling that membrane off?
Absolutely, yeah.
With a glove? Yeah, can you squeeze into a medium? Or?
While you're ready to do that, I have a question from Kira.
Yeah.
What is the better rib? Pork or beef? You want to repeat that for our.
All right. So I'll ask you, we have a question from the audience, from the students and participants. They're asking what's the better cut, and I guess we could put that as, or a better rib, beef or pork, or maybe we could say what's the difference, because I think it's sort of a preference, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like, what's better, an apple or an orange? It's up to you. They are very different in that beef ribs almost always are going to be something that you cook low and slow, whether it's a back rib or a short rib. It's got a lot more connective tissue. It just needs to be broken down more.
Okay.
Whereas pork is a little more, you can grill baby backs with some
Just
ambient
straight
heat, and you can get them nice and tender. You could do it with spare ribs too, but you don't want to grill beef ribs. You want to slow cook those guys. You barbecue them.
Yeah, I got you. And we're going to talk a little more about cooking techniques after we kind of demonstrate the preparation and then the rub down with some rub. Oh yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, so what we're looking at here is we have the membrane on the back of the rib, and it's one thing that you may be left with to do with yourself when you get this rib home, or you can ask our butchers to do it for you. But it's good, if you come across a rib in the wild and you need to dress it, then this is a good thing to know. And this is the membrane is just like this little bit of a thin layer of like cartilage, or
Yeah,
what
it's
would you
just,
call that? Like,
I don't know the
like
medical word, but
it's like
it's connective tissue. It's
connective tissue, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So you can see here how it goes in sort of a, this whole thing
Yeah.
is the membrane here. So, both sides, both the baby back and the spare for St. Louis, will have a membrane that can be taken off if you want. You don't have to take the membrane off. Some people like the membrane off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What would be the purpose of leaving the membrane on?
It gets crispy.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
kind of like a nice little crispy crunch on
Oh,
there sometimes.
interesting. Yeah, that's good to know. I always take it off just because I'm afraid of like chewiness, but I guess with
Yeah.
a rib, you want that little bit of chew
it's kinda
sometimes,
cool,
it's
yeah.
kind of nice, right? Okay.
It also prevents the meat from absorbing salt, marinade, whatever you're doing.
That's okay.
So that's one reason to take it off. I'm kind of 50-50 on it.
Yeah,
So the best way to do it is the wholer the rib, the easier it is
Okay.
to do this. So we like to do it sometimes, like when we have whole sides of hogs, it's really easy when the whole weight of the hog is there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
What
you
I'm
just-
driving at is not the easiest task,
yeah,
but what you can do is you just kind of take your fingernail, that's how I do it anyway. Kind of go to the rib, go to one of the ribs,
Mhm.
and just kind of pull at it. And let's see here. Kind of try to get your finger underneath of it. Let's see, do we have a towel? I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
towel or something else.
yeah, right here.
Yeah, all right. So,
A towel is helpful for this because it's really slick.
yes, yeah.
And so you end up, it's very
need a little-
slippery.
Need a little traction.
Need some traction, and then
Yeah.
it's just like pulling off a pair of skinny jeans.
That's
you know,
very true. So yeah,
It's like-
once you get it started, it's pretty easy. But it's nice to have a little piece of cloth or something for traction, and then it's just
There you go.
tearing
Oh, yeah,
that
look at
off.
And then it pops right out. And then you can see that meat
Right.
under there. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, that's, I think, what drives me to pull that off is I want to
Yeah.
rub my spice blend into
Absolutely,
the
yeah,
meat.
yeah, you get
And-
the penetration.
Yeah.
Salt, absolutely.
So speaking of that,
Yeah.
so with the ribs, a classic technique with ribs is to throw a rub on it. And one thing I would like to mention is we do have a recipe, and maybe some of you out there have already looked at our barbecue ribs recipe. And this is something I put together with a rub and a sauce. And it's an easy recipe that you can do right in your oven. Right? It's called barbecue, and of course you can do it in a barbecue. And I think what we're looking at here, or what we are looking at here, is just a nice slow cook. Whatever your source of heat is, I mean, it could be the radiator of your truck. That would work. You just want that slow, even heat. But barbecue, a charcoal grill, a gas grill, a pellet, these are all good ways to go with the rib. And but regardless, rub is nice on it. Now, rubs, there's an infinite variety of rubs, and you can make up your own. This is a formula that's kind of like in a Texas style. And, it's a Texas style because it has some of those border ingredients, right? The cumin and some chili and stuff you find in those borderlands between Mexico and America. And these are some common spices you'll find around Texas. And there's different rubs in different parts of Texas. I was reading that Central Texas is pretty adamant about, I think they call it a Dalmatian rub. It's just salt and pepper, 50-50. And, and again, and then you get into like dry rubs, which we're doing a dry rub here, and then we're going to sauce it. But some people like to add a little sauce to their rub as well. Just a little juice, whether it's a tad of molasses or something, but just something to kind of get that rib sticky and get the rub on there. So anyway, here's my rub ingredients. So I've got salt, pepper. I've got my I've got my paprika. It's smoked paprika. We've got our cumin, chili powder, granulated garlic and onion, and some mustard, dried mustard. And for this, it's pretty simple. You just throw all this stuff together, and this is one recipe. But of course, you can easily double this, triple it, whatever. I mean, you can make a big jar of this, and then it's ready to go, which is not a bad idea. Then you don't have to do this every time. You know, and like I mentioned, you can add other spices in here. Now, the technique here, this sort of barbecue technique where we're rubbing and then we're saucing and then we're doing a slow, low and slow cook, is actually, it's originated in the Caribbean. And that's like where this style of barbecue comes from. Now, I mean, barbecue, it's got to be one of our most, our earliest forms of cooking, because we have the fire and, you know, probably coming across an animal that was caught in a wildfire and it tasted really good and was easy to eat. But as far as this technique, it was brought to the Americas from the Caribbean. And of course, since that time, there's, as I mentioned, infinite variety and a lot of very localized styles of sauces, of rubs, and of technique. So, you know, it's definitely not something that's set in stone. I think it's an evolution kind of thing, and yeah, it's always evolving, and I think it's a fun technique to experiment with. And you know, and we were talking earlier about, you know, like the charcoal grill and the pellet and the lump charcoal, and so there's and the gas grill, and so a gas grill is pretty handy for something like the ribs, because you can keep that really nice low even heat over a long period of time, and that is something that is handy here. So I'm going to go ahead and rub down this baby back. And so here you can see I have enough rub from the recipe. Oh yeah, anyway, so these recipes are available on a card in all our store locations. And then they're also available online at basicsmarket.com. And so there you can find these recipes as well as other classes and technique lessons on our website. So please check that out if you haven't looked at that yet.
So Chef and Drew, as you're rubbing away there,
Yes.
we have a couple of questions
All right.
about how to guarantee you are going to get a fall off the bone ribs. So Mira is all about that. She's got ribs in the freezer. She's looking for suggestions. So I may have some opinions about that. So please share with Mira.
Well, I would advocate for shooting for fall off the bone, not fall off the bone. To me,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
feel, I guess, you know, trial and error. There's a certain temperature you shoot for. I usually go for about 195, 200.
Yeah, and so again, you know, so with this recipe we're looking at today, we're putting them into a 300-degree oven, and it's going to kind of get up to that 200-degree range and hang out there. One thing to check for your ribs being done, you know, of course you can monitor with a thermometer is always a good idea, but with the ribs, they're definitely going to be done by the time they're tender enough to eat. But one technique is as they're cooking, and actually with the magic of television, I actually have a rubbed down baby back already cooked, and we can check, we'll just go ahead and check it out. But one thing is you can kind of pull on the rib, and when the meat tears a little in between, it's good to go. And as Drew mentioned, for like say a judge at a rib cooking contest, they're going to look down on actually falling off the bone. They want the meat to be tender, and you should be able to tear a little bit, but not necessarily have it fall off. But if you like that, there's nothing wrong with that. You should eat your ribs the way you like it. But that is a good point about there having that little bit of chew is kind of nice. I think we have more questions.
Yes, you're having a little trouble hearing Drew, so I
Oh,
wonder if she could repeat for her what his suggestion was about, mainly cooking methods to make sure they're super tender and different ways to ensure that that's a nice.
Absolutely, yeah. So a constant low heat around that 200, 300 degree range, whatever works for you. You could even go hotter. The point is you want a nice constant heat, and a good way to do this if you're using a grill or you're using or if you're doing it in the oven, either way, is covering it. Would you kind of?
Yeah, well, and that's what we're doing today is and that's what I like to do is I put it in foil. And so the Texas crutch now the Texas crutch is where you're going to grill, and you get a good grill on your ribs open, and then you throw it in the foil with a sauce or a glaze or something, and then you put the foil over and finish it. The way that we're looking at it today is we're actually going to cook it in the foil first and then finish it open and then get our color on there that way. So it's kind of like the reverse sear thing with the steak. Like you can do it either way. You can either start on the grill and go into the oven, or go, or reverse sear would be in the oven and then to the grill. So you can do this same sort of thing with the ribs, and you can even cook your ribs almost through in the oven in the foil, and then if you have, say, like a charcoal grill or something, throw them on the grill to finish with your sauce, and then you'll get your color and you'll get some of that smoky flavor. And so the one thing we don't really get to in the oven is a real nice smoky flavor. So that's where your outdoor, your barbecue can come in handy. But with a good sauce and with all that smoked paprika and so forth, you can get pretty close just with an oven bake rib. And use the broiler, right? Yeah.
So Vera would like to know, what about pre-boiling?
I've seen a lot of that, yeah. My brother does it.
Oh, really? I haven't boiled.
Yeah, you absolutely can do it. If it works for you, do it.
Yeah.
What that's going to do is it's going to raise the temperature of those ribs in an environment where they're not going to lose any moisture. Yeah, so you could totally do that. I personally couldn't give you any tips on how long or how to do that, but
yeah, so I mean, we're looking at these sort of, I call them gentle cooking techniques, whether it's a boil, just to get it going, and then I suppose if you're seasoning with a rub, you'd do that after the boil and then onto the grill and then the sauce. So all these things are going to give you layers of flavor, and anyway, here's those baby backs after they've been rubbed and then put in the oven. And so now is the time where we can sauce it. So after we rub it, where we want to, excuse me, Drew, I'm gonna show the foil here. And so what we want to do is really wrap it tight in the foil, and what this will create some steam. So we're talking about boiling. This would be steaming. So we're with its own juices, and yeah. So you just want a nice seal on there, and that's how it's going to go in the oven. You want the meat side up. So there's a bone side where we took the membrane off, right? And you've got your meat side, and you want that meat side up, at least for the first part of the cook. And that just allows that meat it allows the cartilage to get nice and tender. And then if you want, you can flip it over at the end and let those juices come back through. But again, you're going to be flipping it a couple times when you're putting the sauce on and this sort of thing. So about sauce, I do have a nice little sauce recipe for you, and I'm just going to go through that real quick. I think making barbecue sauce is really fun. Of course, there's a zillion barbecue sauces already available that, if you don't want to dabble with the barbecue sauce. We even have some basics brands that we just came out with. We've got, we're making a Kansas City, Carolina Gold, and the original. And so these are 3 different flavor profiles from different parts of America. They're all a little bit different. So those are available in the basics markets. But like I said, making your own is pretty fun, and it's very simple. I have some things here. These are the ingredients for making your own barbecue sauce. We have apple cider vinegar, molasses. I like a molasses-based barbecue sauce. I have some brown sugar, salt and pepper. This is just a can of tomato sauce, like just a real generic kind of tomato sauce, or plain tomato sauce. We've got some Tabasco, smoked paprika again, Worcestershire sauce, which gives us a really neat umami flavor, a depth of flavor. You like Worcestershire sauce, Drew?
I put it on everything.
You put it on.
Oh,
he puts it on everything.
Yeah, prunes, like with fish. It's got everything in it.
Yeah.
Tamarinds.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good.
I am standing close so we can hear Drew a little bit.
I'll yell at
This
the
is
mic.
the closest I've stood next to anyone in years.
I know.
But
It's that vaccine.
yeah, fennel seed, and so sometimes ground fennel seed is sort of hard to find, but I just take the whole fennel seed and I chop it up, or use a mortar and pestle, that sort of thing. We again some ground mustard and a little bit of minced garlic. So all this stuff we're just going to throw in a saucepan and heat it through. Let it simmer a bit, and then you whiz it up with an immersion blender, or if you don't have an immersion blender, you can use a regular blender or a food processor or something. And that's just to get it emulsified a little bit, get those onions and garlic all.
Make sure you let it cool.
Let the sauce cool.
Yeah, before you put it in a blender. I have
Oh, right.
burnt the skin off my hand before. And,
Yeah,
blend
let it cool.
barbecue sauce.
Dang. Yeah, it does turn into hot lava. And yeah, all the sugars. So one thing that's kind of nice about making your own barbecue sauce is it doesn't have to be so sweet. So many commercial barbecue sauces, they're just a little too sweet for my taste, and they'll use like corn syrup and stuff like that. So if you are purchasing a barbecue sauce, that's not in, that's not our Basics brand, which of course is not too sweet. But you want to watch out for corn syrup and things like that, refined sugars. So that I like the sweetness mostly to come from the molasses because it's almost sort of more of a savory sweetness in a way. It has some depth.
Molasses has got its own thing going on.
Yeah.
Nothing like it.
But again, you could use this recipe here as a template and then take it in your own direction, add some other stuff you might like. And again, it's just a lot of fun experimenting with your ribs. And, ribs weren't always the delicacy that we know today.
No.
They were actually a discard, weren't
That's
they?
right. Yeah, they were scraps. They were they were kind of lowly peasant food. Yeah.
Yeah, and also they were just like butchers would just give them away because they just have stacks of these ribs because they'd be cutting and
not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, you have to pay now.
Yeah.
Got an interesting question. If you could repeat it, Sam, that's great. The question is, I've heard that ribs, bake the ribs in the oven wrapped in saran wrap or barbecue flavors and juiciness. Let's repeat that one. 'Cause that's a
Okay,
good question.
so there's a question about wrapping the rib in saran wrap and then putting it in the oven before barbecue. I personally would veer away from the saran wrap. Maybe if it was under the foil also, but I don't like putting plastic in the oven. But I suppose if the heat was really low, but I think the foil will do the same thing for you. I mean, what do you think, Drew?
So I used to work at a restaurant where we did just that, but the thing was we used like a pan, like a deep pan, and the meat sat in a liquid, like a braising liquid essentially, and then the plastic wrap just went over the top, just over the lid,
Okay.
and then foil over that, and then but you definitely don't want to take like cling wrap and wrap your meat fully in that and put it in the oven. That's not a good.
Yeah, so if you have the foil on top, you get what this technique you're speaking to is that sealing and getting the steam going. So of course plastic is going to hold everything in, but if you get a tight seal just with the foil, it should do pretty much the same thing.
So on the other end of the spectrum,
Yes.
Somebody's asking about what about the ribs in an air fryer?
All right, there's a question about doing ribs in an air fryer. I just got an air fryer, an oven that has air frying, and I find it's really nice. Like so far, I've used it mostly for roasting vegetables, especially cauliflower, which is my daughter's favorite. Just air frying, and it's awesome. I haven't done much meat with an air fryer, and it seems like it might overcook it a bit and dry it out because the air fryer will tend to dry.
Yeah, I don't know if you can cook it hot enough in an air fryer.
Okay.
I've cooked spare ribs. This might be a little beside the point from what we're doing here. We're doing low and slow. But especially in like Chinese cooking, right? They'll take spare ribs, cut them individually, and roast them super hot, like 450 or higher. And that style of cooking might work if you can get the air fryer hot enough. It might be worth a try. You could totally try it, but I'm not going to recommend it.
Yeah, that's sort of a different technique than barbecue.
Yeah, it's aside from what we're doing here, but
yeah,
if you were gonna try to air fry them, I might go that method. Otherwise, don't try it.
But I mean, I could see it for finishing because we are
Yeah.
using the broiler to finish.
Totally.
So
That's a good
once you get your, maybe go low and slow to get the cook, to get it to that tender stage, then sauce it and then air fry, and it would kind of do the same thing as the
totally.
broiler. So, good point. All right, so this is the immersion blender. These are really handy if you don't have one. It's something to look into. Great for doing this sort of thing, or soups, things, and then you don't have to transfer hot, liquids in back and forth, and you lessen the chance of burning yourself. So I'm just going to whiz this up a bit. And I'm just trying to get all that onion and garlic emulsified into the sauce.
Smells pretty good.
Yeah. I like this sauce.
Smell that molasses.
It's molasses.
Oh.
All right. And that should do it. And we ideally let it go a little longer, but for the purpose of this class, we're going to speed things up a tad.
And a question about saucing from Vera. She'd like to know, can you boil or bake it and have it be dry and crispy without the sauce? Would that be another method?
Yes, we have a question about, skipping the sauce and doing just a dry rub, or having them dry. And yes, that is also a method. I think there's probably nothing that hasn't been done to the ribs, or there's really not a wrong way to do it. You just want to cook them until they're to that point you like them, and you can rub them or you can sauce them. This is just sort of a classic technique where you're rubbing and then saucing, and you'll get a lot of flavor this way. But yeah, a lot of people like just a dry rib, and that works. Great. Yeah.
Or will they still be tender without the sauce?
Yes, and Vera, I remember now we were talking about how can you tell when they're done, and so these are these baby backs, and I'm just going to demo. I just took them to that point where I can tear the meat in between the bones a little bit, and that's how I know it's tender. So these are tender, they're cooked. I could eat them right now, but I want them a little bit saucy. So I'm just going to put some sauce on, and then I'll put them in the oven and under the broiler, or I alternatively, if I could throw them on a barbecue and on a grill, or in a barbecue situation. Now, Drew, could walk us through the difference between barbecuing and grilling. That's
So grilling typically means you're cooking meat over a high temperature for a short amount of time, whether it be propane or charcoal, whatever. Barbecue refers to more the process of low and slow, involving smoke, a constant amount of smoke. So, like public smokers, you can use a charcoal smoker. I smoke stuff in a wet room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just put some wood chips in there, right?
Yeah.
Soak them a little bit.
Yeah. Moist wood chips right onto the coals, and works pretty well. You got to keep a constant, steady, low temperature. Probably hotter than 230, I would say, depending on what you're smoking.
Great. Okay, so in this case, we're just going to be using the oven. I've brushed both sides of my ribs here with some sauce, and then throw them in the oven. And what's going to happen is under the broiler, they're going to get some color. They're going to bubble up a tad, and or the sauce will bubble a little bit. And then when you get it to that point where you want it, the amount of color, you know, you can pull them. And it usually takes a little bit, and it's handy to flip them, you know, have some tongs available, brush with the sauce, flip it over, brush again, you know, and keep an eye on them. And you should have some very tasty ribs pop out on the other end there. So into the oven it goes. And if you're lucky, your ribs will grow after they've been in the oven, like it happened to us here. What? Yeah, so those baby backs turned into some St. Louis, which is fortunate because that's our favorite kind, right, Drew?
That's right. Yeah. It's some TV magic.
Yeah, TV magic, the expanding rib. So here we've got these ribs, and they were in that oven getting some color. You can see that sauce has a lot of nice color. I think it turned out really nicely. So at this point, we can slice them up. So what we've got is our rack here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it off, and then we'll cut them.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. It will be like connected. Just hold it? All right, why not? It's fun. Yeah, so, Chuck, yeah.
Cooking methods, tenderizing,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see here. Let's start. Pretty open-ended there. Start me off. Give me a jumping off point.
All right, Drew. So I think we're looking at, yeah, that. Yeah, do we have a specific question for Drew?
Yeah, I'll just be talking for like an hour and a half
I mean,
if it's that open-ended.
yeah.
So the difference, the one I remember, baking versus broiling. So broiling, I would only do at the end after they've been baked low and slow for a long time. They've hit that nice internal temperature, and you've done that pull test, and you know that they're tender enough. Broiling's not gonna get them tender. It's just gonna crisp them up, and maybe caramelize that sauce just a little bit. As far as tenderizing, salt helps a lot. Salt helps pork, all meat, retain moisture. It just kind of adds osmotic pressure that holds the moisture in, and also it tastes good.
yeah, the difference between grilling and oven baking.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, yeah. So grilling versus oven baking. If you're gonna grill and you want to do it this style, you want to do it over indirect heat, low and slow for a long time. And then in the oven, of course, how we've been doing it here, give it a nice good wrap so it doesn't lose that moisture. And then you could even, and then like we talked about earlier, you can wrap them and throw them back on the grill so that they don't lose moisture. And then kind of crank the heat a little bit and get them crispy at the end, as opposed to doing them under the broiler, however.
Maybe go back to the saran wrap answer.
Oh, sure. Yeah, totally. Don't do it. Don't do saran wrap on your pork. So no, just kidding. But I mentioned earlier that one method of braising pork is to you take like a big pan, we call them like hotel pans, like the big metal pans. You could do it with a casserole dish, I suppose. and you wrap it. You put the meat in a liquid that it's going to braise in, and then you put like plastic cling wrap over that, and then you put foil on top of that. And then you do it low and slow. And what that does is it creates a seal where the moisture won't get out at all. It's nice, it works, but also maybe, putting plastic in the oven is risky.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Sam?
I'd agree. I don't think it's necessary. I think, you can get a good enough seal just using the aluminum foil. And that's what we did here, just a nice tight wrap with that aluminum foil to start. And then we opened it up, we sauced it, and then put it under the broiler. And that's how you can get some color. So the broiler or the grill. And then you just want to sauce it and keep an eye on it and get it to that color you want.
So someone would like to know what to use instead of aluminum foil.
Well, one thing sometimes that I'll do when I want to cover something is I'll use just like a sheet pan. Excuse me, I'll grab. I think we've got one handy right
Oh,
here.
totally, yeah.
So I have my my ribs on one of these deals, right? And I could put my ribs directly on the sheet pan, and then I could just pop another one over the top, and that would create, that would be a covering. So, or, you might want this bottom layer to be like a casserole, like Drew mentioned, and then if you could fit a lid on that, or a sheet pan or something. Well, what we're looking at doing is we're just want to create a kind of a steam oven in a way. And so we're going to, just get a seal on there with using whatever you've got. And so you just want it to be as tight as possible, not letting that nice moisture escape, because we want to keep the ribs nice and moist.
We have two questions for Drew.
All right, two questions for Drew.
Yep. One question is the membrane easier to remove if the meat is colder or closer to room temp? We find it hard to remove. Wasn't that a lot of super good folks here?
Yeah.
So the question is it easier to remove the membrane when the ribs are cold or when they're at room temperature, or does the temperature matter?
Well, let's see. I personally wouldn't recommend letting your meat get up to room temperature. It's not really food safe. But I would say, yeah, it's easier when they're less rigid. But I think the takeaway is just I find it's easier to start from the shorter end, whatever rib that is. So if you start from the shorter end, wherever the membrane is the most narrow.
And then using the towel is a really
yes.
good tip. Using a dish towel, and you just so you can get some grip on that thing is very helpful.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. You can even get it started with a, oftentimes when we're having trouble doing it in the meat department, we'll use a, let's see, do we still have, we'll use a skewer like this. And you just kind of take that skewer and pop it under the membrane on that first rib there. And that really helps get you going.
Great. And we have another question for Drew.
Yes, Drew. A couple folks joined us a little bit into the presentation. I wondered if you could go over the difference between St. Louis and ribs and baby backs in a little bit more detail.
Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll go back to, I'll hold this for you, Drew. We'll go back to kind of where we started, where Drew was showing us all about the different parts of the rib cage here. So again, this is a pork rib. So these are the ribs of a pig. And then we have the different sections. So what are we looking at, Drew?
Right on. So, well, we lost our baby backs, but that's okay.
Well, I can find them. I'm going to find this. find those baby backs. But yeah, let's see what we got. So I'll bring the baby backs back, and these baby backs, of course, we've already seasoned and sauced and all that, but let's have a look. So I'm just going to flop them down, okay? All right, there's the baby backs. And so these baby backs have been cooked and sauced, but that's where they'd fit in the scheme of things here, in the natural order, before they were rudely separated.
Yeah, you can see how much they've shrunk too.
Yeah, that's
They've
interesting.
shrunk by about 10% or so. So right here, this is a rack of full spare ribs. So this is further broken down into the St. Louis here and the rib tip here. So the rib tip is a low, slow braising cut. It's got a lot of connective tissue, a lot of cartilage. Well, not to say that the St. Louis style itself doesn't, but this is, it's just more ribby, right? It's got, a bone with meat on it. So when you break it down to the St. Louis cut, you got just ribs. And then here, you can totally cook this whole, absolutely, and then take the rib tip off later, eat it however you want. Or you could cook the rib tip separately, or, leave the rib tip for somebody else, have your butcher just cut it off, and you just want St. Louis cuts. That's great. Then these are the baby backs. The baby backs are the part closest to the spine. So we can refer to this again, which is where the loin sits. So they're the first portion of the rib here. They're all the same ribs. They're all the same bone. And then down below here, you got your spare ribs. On top of the spare ribs sits the pork belly. Take the pork belly off. You make bacon with that, whatever you want. And then, the spare ribs are what's left over. Maybe that's why they call them spare ribs. I never really thought about that.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, there's extra. Yeah, you can throw them out. All right, and then down here, these are what's known as country style ribs or boneless shoulder ribs. They're not really ribs. They're kind of next to a rib. I don't really know why they're called country style ribs. It's an old naming convention from a long time ago. They're just a boneless cut of pork shoulder cut into strips. So another good braising cut, low and slow. You honestly could do this recipe with these if you really wanted to. I don't see any reason why you couldn't.
Yeah, it would work. And, again, it's just, we're looking at that low and slow covered heat, whatever heat method you've got, will eventually cook those ribs. And you want again, they'll be ready when you can kind of pull them apart, get the meat to just tear a little bit. Ideally, you don't want the bone falling out. We do use that term, fall off the bone is a way that people like to denote really tender meat. And that is what we're looking at here, is very tender meat. But if you can catch it right before it's that fall off the bone, it's really ideal, because then also you've got a little bit of a handle and a little bit of a chew. And I already started eating a rib, Drew, while you were talking, because I couldn't resist. And, it's pretty good. I must say, they're all right. Are you going to try it? Try it?
Yeah, try it.
All right. Okay, I will.
And Sam, when you
Yeah.
have the link, you have a cooking question.
Okay.
Can you marinate ribs?
Absolutely. You can marinate the ribs. Again, it's just your preference as to what kind of marinade you like, and give them a little marinade. That would add yet more flavor. I mean, I think you can't have too much flavor. Am I right? Yep. Apparently it's true. Drew agrees.
You.
Anyway, I think that we're kind of in conclusion here, unless we have more questions. I'm gonna wrap it up like a rib. And thank you everybody for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I'm super excited to have a guest in the kitchen with us. Drew, maybe we'll get to do this again and some more meat related stuff.
I would love that. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was very interesting to see all the ribs laid out and kind of how the progression of cuts, you know, and in our meat markets, in our butcher shops, you guys cut up whole hogs. Is that true? Well, not lately, but I remember you doing that in the beginning, and you're going to maybe be doing that again, huh?
Once our hogs are coming in from our own farms, we'll be back to doing split hogs in person, or in the shop rather.
Yeah, and that's always really interesting to watch. If you're able, they're still doing lambs a lot, and I always enjoy seeing that, because you can see where each of those pieces comes off, and it's quite interesting. So anyway, yeah, all our butchers are very happy to talk to you. They're very knowledgeable, and please come in and ask them some questions, challenge them, ask them some really difficult questions, right?
So we get better. Yeah.
And but yeah, and come buy some ribs and cook them up. Have fun with it, and as always, what we like to say is happy cooking, and we'll see you next time.